You guys manage labor in your budgets and you have supplies. Now, a lot of that's out of your control in terms of specifically price changes, but organizationally, you may see a variance be created because of a supply change on a key piece of supply. So if you think about some of the things you use on your units and what's some of that stuff that's very expensive, whether it's a drug, whether it's an actual piece of equipment or supply that's expendable, that could be a reason for a variance. And it's important that you guys understand that so that if you're ever questioned in that area, which supplies are not the major portion of our budget, but they're still very important because what did I say in the beginning? Labor is the number one biggest expense we have. What's number two? Supplies. So just like I tell the nurse residents, you know, and I used to be guilty of this too, well, I'm just going to put 3 extra gel codes in my pocket because I might need them. But then what happens when the packaging gets destroyed? You got to throw them away. If it gets open, you got to throw them away. Throw some extra 4x4s in. I may give me an extra IV start kit. But when it gets damaged, I got to chunk it. So that would be an example of controllable management of supplies, but you will see price changes. What about volume changes in workload? Has anybody seen some shifts, pretty significant shifts in your volume? Is it a sustained shift or has it been an incremental shift and then it went back?
I've seen some shifts.
You've seen some shifts? Sustained? So from a variance standpoint, we're going to get into this and kind of looking at determining the reason. What would be some reasons for that shift in your mind that you could explain?
Well, we have 2 vascular surgeons.
So you got a vascular surgeon that's come in that's produced more workload probably. Yep. Or you get one that leaves and you can't do as many cases because you don't have a meeting. Yep. So be an example. Who else?
We had some incremental changes back in the winter with the spike of the flu because women's services took over flu.
Yeah, you guys took some overflow from the others for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that because I remember us when we were sending people, moving people around.
Yeah.
What about unexpected shifts in availability of staff? What would be an example of an unexpected shift? It doesn't happen in our world, but it would happen it's happened recently in Massachusetts and California. Strike. Unionized issues and strikes, yes. That would be an unexplained shift. So in the instance of Massachusetts, what did they do? Because you're going to create a couple of different variances here. You may create an hours variance, and you may create what else kind of variance? A dollars variance. What did they do to accommodate that strike in Massachusetts recently? They brought in a ton of agents. They cleaned up almost every agency nurse they could find on the eastern seaboard to accommodate that.
Focusing which then potentially to staff, currently staff nurses, like, oh, no.
And I'm going to be an agency nurse. But what did they do to their dollar? Their average dollar per hour went up. So one of the things that you don't see on your report to web is exactly that. We're going to talk about it. You really need to know, and report to web honestly needs to be adjusted to show you what your labor mix dollar per hour is. So you have a budgeted per hour labor mix for your nurses and your techs and your secretaries. What is that labor mix running in terms of average hourly rate as you go through the course of the year? That's not readily available in this process, which is a little bit of a deficit for y'all in terms of determining what can happen there. And there are reasons for that. Politically, we've always kind of had that thought about what we do with hourly rates and UCs and all that stuff. You do know as managers, you guys can see your employees' hourly rates. So you can easily calculate kind of where that is. We have the ability, and we're talking about it now, we have the ability actually to have the hourly rates in massed in API. So it would give us an actual dollar labor based on how the mix is. So we may eventually see that. But that is important because as we go through this process, we're talking hours and we're talking dollars. Remember, you manage both sides of your budget. And you can be 100% productive and be out of whack in your dollars budget in the end result, right? And that's because to be 100% productive, what did you do? You brought in 20% more contract labor, i.e. travelers. So it pushed your average hourly rate, say from 25 to 30 or $32 per hour on average, and it caused you to come that way. So that can't happen. But you can see unexpected shifts in availability of demand. Really, it's around strikes. What else could it be in our world? What could in theory happen during flu season? And we did see this. We did block some beds and we did move some stuff around and we probably created some variants when people were sick, right? We had times where we had units where we had 5 and 6 nurses calling in text because legitimately people were sick. So that'd be an example. So let's talk a little bit about, here we go, we're going to get into that investigation and control. How small is too large when you're looking at variances and aggregation? This gets to the point of aggregation of variances. By that I mean the whole, not the individual parts. And this gets to a problem when we mass things and the way we run ClickView too. So if we say in ClickView as an example, Richland is 100% productive. And let's say in theory Richland for the month ran 100,000 hours and they were budgeted 100,000 hours. Is that good or bad? Is there any variance there? No, there's 0 variance. Okay? Is that good or bad? Well, what do we know about, and this is actually happening in Richland right now, at our hospital. So if I show you ClickView and I click on all 4 hospitals, it's going to show me at nearly 100% productivity, right? Well, what has happened? What do we know? We're losing money, right? So if I just went on that, would I do any investigation? No. What do we want to know about this under Richland? And this comes, and I'm doing this at the aggregate level to then bring it to your budget. Because you look at this in your budget, if you just look at the bottom number, like what we saw in yours, and you're hitting your dollars mark, but then then what happens in those individual accounts? So let's say Richland, Department A was, and this is actual, and this is budgeted, Department A ran, of this 100,000 hours, Department A ran an actual of 20. They were scheduled for 10. See where I'm getting? So then would we want to look at this and figure out why that happened? Why do we want to do that if the whole is running well? Because is there an opportunity to get even better and move even beyond that contribution margin? This is variability. This goes back again to the same fundamental concept here of variability within the overall process. Okay? Same problem you have on your budgets. So who's directly on target with their budget? Who wants to
Target, completely on target with
their dollars
something.
budget? Their dollars, year to date, who's hitting the mark? Or very close to it?
For what, but all?
Sarah's pretty close.
For labor dollars?
No, for overall dollars.
So where do you find that in the report? Wait, I'm sure I'm not. Contribution margin?
Overall department expenditures, right?
Which one are you looking at?
Ooh, let's use yours.
Am I good?
Yeah, you're doing good.
Which one are you looking at?
You're looking at total departmental expenses.
She's like,
I'm gonna send mine to you in one for me.
she's like everybody.
Total departmental
Yeah.
expenses. You doing pretty good? You doing pretty good? Well, I'm
Trying to
thinking.
find out.
Yeah. I'm gonna stay Steve said.
You've got a positive sense. Let's see what you guys are doing.
Don't call him and go back.
You're doing pretty good. Okay?
Don't call Steve.
You're actually, you're not bad. You're spending $2 million and you only got a $31,000 variance, a 1.28% negative variance. That's not bad at all, okay? I'm gonna pick on Daniel, because I happen to look at his first.
And I thought I was doing bad. I'm gonna call you every month, Steve.
So Daniel is running year-to-date, he's running a 0.94% positive variance. So in the grand scheme of things, if I only looked at this up here, would I investigate anything in Daniel's department? No? Let me see if I can find something to investigate. Dang it, I found it quick. Look at that.
Yeah. But I tell you, no, I want you to investigate the tech.
That's what I'm looking at.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
good, on mine too.
Because I don't know how I'm $20,000 in 1 month on tech.
Yeah, mine's huge too.
That's what I'm looking at.
But see, if you look at LPN, you're budgeted, and I don't even have LPN.
I don't either.
I'm like a 600% variation
Mine-
to the negative
Mine
of the
is
year.
the same way, mine's the same way.
Just text. We use
So
the
we
text as
found,
text.
have we found problems already? This is
Yeah.
my point around how small is too small. If I simply said Daniel is running an overall variance of 0.94% good, would I really want to examine anything in his unit? And if I were the manager, if I were looking at this going, well, shoot, I'm doing all
So
right.
I looked at it like I'm doing bad. I see too many parentheses. I'm like. So I
That's
didn't have.
exactly my point, how small is too small.
Yeah.
So let's take it down to the line item level, okay? When you're looking at these on a month-to-month basis, okay, and that's this rule of thumb here, and let's say that variance is a negative $100 in the first month. And the total budget, and we'll get to this in a minute, but then what you need to assume, and let's say this is the month of October, you need to assume that this is going to occur the same way every month. So if you just say, well, it's just $100 this month, no big deal. At the end of 12 months, that's $1,200, right? That may or may not begin to add up to a significant amount of money relative to the line item and to the budget as a whole. Now, $1,200 in a 1-point-something billion dollar budget, no. But individually in that line item, it may add up. So if I've got 100 here and negative 50 here, negative 25 here, you see where I'm getting down to line items? All that begins to add up. So you have to assume under a rule of thumb that these are going to reoccur every month unless you find a way to control what happened.
So why do you think the techs are off by that much? Because for year to date, I'm 670-something% to the
Yes.
negative.
Yep.
And techs don't, I mean, let's just be cold with this, techs don't make that much money to have 20,000 in 1 month.
My fundamental first thought is, when I look at this, first thing I would do is go dig for that month into Kronos and see what got allocated where. So we'll talk about that at the end in terms of looking at different mechanisms to look at this. Because I have some of the same issues in a couple of my areas. And what I do is I go through and start looking at who got allocated time and attendance to that. Does that make sense to me? Or is there, because you may find, if you're not looking at it closely, or I don't know who does your timekeeping over there, inadvertently,
They don't get coded to where
they don't get coded, sometimes they don't get coded to where they're supposed to be. We see that kind of hopping around all the time.
That happens a lot.
It happens a lot when you think about it. So if you're not investigating these things on a consistent basis, because if you look at this month and you figure out immediately if this is a big enough concern to you, exactly why it's happening, you can go figure out how to preclude it, so that at the end, you're not down 624%. So that's part of my point is that how small is too large? If I just simply looked at his and said, he's got a 1% positive variance, I may go no further. But when you start digging into the line items, where are your opportunities?
So let me ask you this, and this is just kind of an out, I guess, but just to say, so am I technically on budget?
Technically, you're on budget.
So technically, I'm doing what I need to do for budget. But there are some opportunities within that budget that I could do better.
So if we controlled these things, so let me look here. Your big ticket items that we should control are your techs and figure out what's going on there. Because year to date in the budget, you're only supposed to have spent 20,000. I don't think that's right.
And I spent
Okay,
that, and I
so-
spent that in one year.
Is this
one
part
month.
of it, so like on mine where it breaks down
These
from
are your
hours, PST and PST2, it's way off.
Yep.
So
And
then
what-
your PST2 is gonna be.
Yeah, what may happen here is that you weren't originally, you didn't have enough hours allocated, and that's what's happened in my department, is I don't have enough hours allocated for paying attention to a couple of processes, so there may not be all of them there. So it may be a fundamental budget issue.
Right.
The budget wasn't fixed correctly at the beginning.
Right.
So you're inherently going to have a variance because the base budget wasn't.
So just your PST2 is higher pay rate. Then
Yes, that's right.
So let me ask you this, Steve.
So when I look down here at PST, see, you have kind of based on that, you're 41,000 off.
And that's what I got.
And my point in this is, if his expected and budgeted contribution margin, let's see, budgeted is a 0.72, he's running a 0.82 contribution margin, so you're actually doing 10% better than what's budgeted in that sense, from a contribution margin standpoint, but it could be better.
Yeah.
If you control these and understand these line item issues, and let's say in theory your budget is correct, and for whatever reason, and this wasn't as far off, but as we'll talk about in a minute, you see where you may have an opportunity to better manage the shift activities and cycle time of your techs, and or look at your ratios and those kind of things. That would contribute more to the whole in terms of contribution margin from a process efficiency standpoint. That's my point.
So quick question, so we don't use LPNs. To me, LPNs, we don't really hire LPNs unless they're in school to be an RN. Some departments have an LPN or two, but, so I've got like, what, $7,000, how much is for LPNs?
No, let's see, LPN's
3,000.
budgeted year to date is 135,
And how much have I used?
20,000, 21,000.
So that's what the variance is, so I'm budgeted 135 for LPNs, I don't use the LPNs. So is some of the techs
Probably,
coming from the LPN budget?
you're offsetting that somewhere.
And can I go to finance and say, okay, I'm budgeted 135,000 for LPNs, I don't use the LPNs, can I have that money
But
reallocated
you
in my
gotta make
budget?
sure exactly when you're doing this is where you start digging into time and attendance, and just to see exactly what was allocated.
Okay.
Can I hear it, Tom?
Yeah.
Because if I've been the manager on surgical 3 years, and I've never had an LPN. We don't have LPNs. So if I could dig and find that, could I ask for that money to be reallocated?
Who got? I'll take care of it, thank you.
So could I ask for that money to be reallocated within my budget? Could I say, hey, I've got 135,000 I'm not using, can
As
I?
long as you're certain you're not using it for some other reason.
Okay.
That's why I say dig very deeply before you start asking for line item reallocations.
Okay.
When we do this over here, and we've looked at this a couple times, I've had to go to Levi with every penny and every hour to be sure we weren't inadvertently gonna move money that was really being spent for that purpose.
So how do I find out how a tech was charged under LPN bucket? Because again, we don't use LPN at all.
You would have, I don't think that could happen, in theory it can't happen because the job code associated with the tech then flows to the job code and accounting for the techs from the time and attendance system. So what you really need to do is go to accounting and say why,
Yeah.
and say, where is this dollar being allocated from? And it's probably, you can probably find it in Lawson HR to see what's going on.
And you'll show us that?
Well, Lawson HR, I can't show you,
Okay.
that would be the question to ask. I'll show you Chronos and a couple of things in
Okay.
there, okay?
But it's
So-
definitely something messed up too, because I have LPN charges with ICU.
You gotta find out why that's
Yeah,
occurring,
and I
because you
have-
do see it in other areas. Yep.
You're having to LPN?
All right, so that kind of is a separate question in that sense. But does everybody kind of see my point in the how small is too large? You don't want to look at insignificant things.
So look at
I
what
don't want
figure.
to, I'm not going to sit here and get stressed over, let me look and find one.
Like my mileage is over, but I've been traveling to Columbia, so.
Yeah, minor equipment, for example, you're budgeted for $102 and you've spent $143. Am I really going to stress over that? Remember from an accounting standpoint, at the very beginning, in the language of finance, I said material versus immaterial. Is a variance of $41 material to a $3 million budget?
And see, like
No.
the medical equipment non-chargeable is any kind of ortho braces, knee braces, all that kind of stuff. We don't charge the patient. The unit pays for it.
Yeah, you absorb that cost.
And then the R&E here, I had a bucket, I could put it in ortho supplies.
Mhm.
And on my report to web, I don't have a bucket to code it to, because what I was trying to do was code it to a separate department. So when I go to finance, and I can say I need my ortho supply bucket increased by $2,000. And I have not found out how to do that in report to web, it's all.
Well, now that's, report to web feeding on that side is feeding from the accounting system.
Okay.
There probably is an object code, so you need to go back and find the master list of object codes. Somebody keeps that, whether that's your director or somebody. Figure out what that object code is, and if you're gonna code it that way, make sure it's coded to that object code as long as everybody agrees that's the right thing. All right, so we can also use control charts or run charts? Who's ever used a run chart? A control chart? Anybody ever seen one? I'm gonna show you how to calculate one at the end. But I'm gonna show you real quick up here, basically what it is. So when you look at a run chart, divide here. Let's say that you're scheduled to use 200 hours each day on labor. We're gonna do this on a daily basis, right? Number one, on a control chart, what you're really looking to say is it in control or out of control based on some limit? Okay, so a control chart has what your actual is, what your performance was in a month, or a day, or an hour, or whatever it is it's measuring. And it has an upper control limit and a lower control limit. And that can be arbitrarily set, or it can be statistically set. There is actually a statistical formula that sets upper and lower control limits. A lot of places will run them 3 sigma above the mean, 3 sigma below, because that gets into 6 sigma. That's where, if you look at it, when you do a 6 sigma, 96.1, I think if I remember the number, it's been a while since I did it. 96 in 6 sigma, 96.6 or 1% of all observations are within 3 sigma below or 3 sigma above. Typically, that's where 6 sigma comes from. It's almost 99%, or 1 in 1 something million outside of that control limit. So you'd set an upper and lower control. And what is let me ask you this from a budget standpoint, what's been typically our range of acceptable performance productivity? Now, I know we've changed that to 100%, but historically it's been 95 to 100, okay? Or 105 or 110. So we'll say 95 to 105% of expected hours. So let's say in theory that this first one was 200 is the actual. You would want a lower control limit of 95% of that fundamentally, right? And I'm going to simplify this and assume that it's 200. It's supposed to be 200 all the way across. We'll do 4 periods, 5 periods. So 95% of 200 is 190, right? Is that right? Sure.
Sure.
We'll just say, we're going to arbitrarily set a control limit, lower control limit at 190. So you would set a control of 190 for lower, this is your lower control. And then we need to set an upper control because you don't want to be using too many hours, right? So our upper control would be that 110%, right? So that would be 220. 220, right? So these are your controls. In a run chart or a control chart, and we're in the process here actually, one of the things Levi and I talked about is building these for y'all so we can look. Because what it's designed to do is keep you in the lane, so to speak, is really what it's fundamentally supposed to do. So let's say, period run, we're budgeted for 200, we run 200. We're budgeted for 200 and we run, well, let's go up. So this is 200 right here. So let me fix this so this looks realistic. So period 2, we go to 205. This is 200, 205. Period 3, we're inching up, 209. Period 4, we jump up here to